Can't get enough of fantasy sports? Sign up at draft.com and use promo code 4FANS when you sign up to get a free entry into a $3 contest after your first deposit. Again, use promo code 4FANS, before FANZ, when you sign up to get a free entry into a $3 contest after your first deposit. Download the Draft app on Google Play and also available on the Apple App Store.
Okay, my guest he is from Fantasy Pros, and he always comes here every Thursday when it comes to fantasy football. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, please welcome my good friend, Mr. Walton Spurlin, to the program. Welcome, Walton, and how are you doing, sir?
I am doing awesome, Shawn. Once again, a pleasure, as always, to be a part of this fine show and to get the opportunity to once again talk fantasy football and, you know, hopefully help some owners out there rack up some victories as we head into Week 4.
And the good thing about Week 4 is there is no blackouts for TV views. So you can watch both of the games on your area. So I know here in Detroit, it's Kansas City and Detroit. And then for the CBS, one of the doubleheaders is Buffalo and New England. So you'll be able to watch both games. Because we usually see, usually if a home team plays, the other station usually blacks it out if it's a doubleheader.
Right, and hey, the more football we can see, the better. So, you know, and that's going to be an interesting games. At least, you know, hope the Lions can keep it interesting. But let's see what Buffalo's really made of. If it's a real 3-0 record, see what kind of game they can give.
Right, because, you know, we don't have an AFC team, so they're going to give us the number 2 commentator, then the number 1. So I like it that way. Okay, we'll talk about that later. Okay, so we have Thursday Night Football, so you can watch it on your local Fox network, the NFL Network, and on Amazon Prime. The game is the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers. This game is at Lambeau Field, and Green Bay is undefeated. And I gotta tell you, I'm impressed with Aaron Rodgers. And then with the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm okay with Carson Wentz. I'm not saying this as a Cowboys fan, but he's kind of okay. But what I'm more concerned is the Philadelphia Eagles secondary, because I don't know how they're going to do it. So the worst part is you're at Green Bay and they're going to run the ball, no question about that, and they're more likely going to balance it out. So if you have the Eagles, what are you very concerned when you're faced against this Packers team?
Yeah, you touched on it, you know, right there for one thing. I think one thing that has to be a concern, and it's from a fantasy standpoint, and it also plays into what you mentioned, is their secondary is very, very banged up. And we're all waiting for Devontae Adams to have a big week. You know, this could be that week. You know, as you mentioned, Aaron Rodgers is playing well. I mean, he's not really so great from a fantasy standpoint.
Right.
He's really outside the top 20, but you can tell that he doesn't care. You know, he's not involved in fantasy every week. The Packers are, as you mentioned, much more balanced, and, you know, that keeps him upright. I think he mentioned it. He only got hit once last week, so he wasn't sore at all. I mean, that's great going into a Thursday night game. You know, they've had, 3 rushing touchdowns by Aaron Jones. Remember back in the day when they got to the 5-yard line, it was always Aaron Rodgers doing some quick pass for a touchdown. That's why he's racking up 35, 40 touchdowns. They're not doing that now. They're saying, we're on the 5. We got a good offensive line. We can run it in. Hey, let's save our quarterback. And so, you know, and like you said, the Eagles in general are still banged up. You know, but for the Packers, I think, you know, you got to roll out Devontae Adams. You know, a young guy, probably most likely you drafted away. Depending on your quarterback option, I think you roll with Aaron Rodgers again because of the matchup at home, banged up defense. You know, I think the Packers should be able to move the ball. Obviously, as a Lions fan, I'm going to cheer for the Eagles. And honestly, if you're a Cowboys fan, and I'll speak to that. I mean, the Eagles, if they go to 1-3. And, you know, the Cowboys are going to looking to be 4-0 after this. I'm sure we'll touch on, but
yeah.
I mean, the Eagles have to go all out, and I just don't know if they have the weapons right now. I mean, you got Zach Ertz, but he still hasn't caught a touchdown, but he's been targeted 30 times. You know, he's getting his receptions. But Alshon Jeffrey, I know he's going to play, but he's got such a history of lower leg issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, how is he going to hold up for the whole game? Because if they have to keep depending on poor Nelson Aguilar, you know, who really, really has the dropsies. I think it's in his head now. Yeah, sure, he's had to be the number 1 receiver, and that's not really his forte.
Right.
But Yeah, he's had such trouble hanging onto the ball, and then good luck to anybody trying to figure out the Eagles running back situation because I don't know what they're doing.
Well, I do have somebody from the Philadelphia Eagles. It's offense. It's nothing to do with defense. And that person is, I want to say, I can't even pronounce this guy's name. Nelson Aguilar.
That's the drops. That's the guy who's struggling with the drops. But hey, they've got to keep going to him just because, again, no Deshaun Jackson.
Because he's going to be the number one guy.
Really, who, Deshaun Jackson?
No, Nelson Aguilar.
Oh yeah, I mean he's got 18 receptions, he's got 3 touchdowns.
Right.
That's the thing, but it's just the untimely drops. I mean, he dropped one 2 weeks ago that just wide open down the sideline, just bounced off his hands. And last week he did something I've never, and that's he fumbled against the Lions when nobody even touched him. Just moving the ball from one hand to the other, he fumbled it. I'm like, man, that's got to be getting hit.
Right. And by the way, the Packers do give up the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So if you do have Nelson Aguilar, good for you, but not try to get him because, in the mornings, people get the fantasy football free agents.
Yeah. Chances are he's probably off the waiver wires only because, we had last week where there was no Deshaun Jackson or Alshon Jeffrey. So everybody was talking up Aguilar. So, but yeah, I mean, he's out there. Like I said, we can't trust Jeffrey to the whole game. Right. I know he sat out last week as maintenance, but again, he's had just so many lower leg injuries.
Okay. So the next one, we have the LA Chargers and the Miami Dolphins. Now, we ain't going to talk about the Miami Dolphins part because we already know how bad the team is. But I did hear, I just watched it this morning, that Melvin Gordon will officially report to the facility and he could make his debut in week 5. So right now I have Austin Ezekiel. That's the best option. And this Charger team to bounce back those previous 2 losses because I feel like they should have won that game last week against the Texans, but you know how the Chargers is when it comes to fourth quarters, they let people down. So this is the best time for the Chargers to rebound against the Dolphins.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, let's face it, for this entire season, a matchup with the Dolphins is your get healthy game for your teams. I mean, that team, like you said, there's nothing really to talk about it on there other than who they're going to select with the number 1 pick, and we'll have all offseason to talk about that. So yeah, ride your Chargers. As you said, Austin Ekeler, this is probably going to be the last week where he's the main running back.
Correct.
So definitely get him in your lineup. He'll maintain some value in PPR leagues even when Gordon comes back, just because he's such a good receiver out of the backfield. But yeah, it's great news for the Chargers that Melvin Gordon's coming back, but not so great news for Ekeler owners. And of course, what can you say about Keenan Allen? He is just on fire. Top fantasy receiver right now in PPR. 29 receptions, over 400 yards, 3 TDs. I love watching him play. He's just gritty. And of course, I'm biased because back in one of my former fantasy jobs, we interviewed college prospects, and I had the opportunity to interview Keenan Allen when he was coming into the draft. So he's always been one of my favorites. And I really wanted the Lions to draft him back then, but alas, it's the Lions, and they did not.
Exactly. It happens, especially when my Cowboys didn't select what's his name, plays for the. Well, I'll talk about that later. But hey, I feel your pain, by the way.
Yeah, the pain of a Lion.
But hey, at least you're 2-0. But let's talk about that, by the way. So I like Kansas City, especially in the AFC West. But my issue is with Kansas City with their defense. They give up a lot of points, especially against the Baltimore Ravens. By the way, last week, because that was a so that's my concern about Kansas City defense. But with the Lions, you never know what Matt Stafford is. 1 week he wise you, and then the next week he's like, okay, what the heck is he doing? So this game is at Ford Field, and this is like Fox Game of the Week, by the way. So I can see this in the scenario. Kansas City wins by a blow, or Kansas City wins by a close game. But if the Lions do win, I can see the Lions winning in the close. So there's like 3 different scenarios we can even see.
Right. My big fear is that the first scenario is one that could be likely, especially if Darius Slay isn't able to play. If he's out, our secondary has been playing well because our run defense hasn't been that good, which really shouldn't hurt us too much this week because Kansas City's rushing game isn't really their strength. It's obviously Mahomes throwing the ball around. So we're going to need a big game from our secondary. Plays out, that's going to be tough. But if we can hang around and be close in the fourth quarter, I know I'm sounding like a Lions fan, but obviously if you're Kansas City, you roll with Mahomes, right. You roll with Sammy Watkins, tight end Kelsey. As far as other receivers, that's kind of a crapshoot. Obviously, there's still going to be no Tyreek Hill. It's almost 6-1, half dozen of the other Kansas City options as who Mahomes may favor that week. But it's going to be tough. But you mentioned something very important, and that's Kansas City's defense, and especially in running game, they're allowing like 6 yards of carry. So if we're ever going to get Kerryon Johnson going, who we certainly haven't to this point in the season, but this is the week to do it because it would behoove the Lions to get the running game going, because I think their best chance to win in one or to get close in your scenarios is to keep the offense off the field. So, if we can establish a run game, let's do that as best as possible. A short passing game if we have to move the chains, keep their offense off the field, and knock on wood. Let's hope Kerryon finally breaks out this week.
And by the way, this is Patrick Mahomes' first game as playing in a dome. I did not even know that as a professional athlete.
Yeah, that's surprising. I heard a little snippet of him in an interview. He's not concerned about that. He's just it's still playing football, and he goes, and it's better than playing in the wind or the rain. At least that the weather's going to be perfect. So it's unless he ends up getting claustrophobic because he doesn't like being locked indoors. Right. I don't think that's really going to work to the Lions' favor too much. But that is an interesting fact. I heard that too, and I was surprised. Right. It seems rare.
And then I also heard, according to Pro Fantasy Focus, they ranked Mahomes as like the NFL 6th best QB as of right now. I was like, really? He should be a top 5 quarterback.
Yeah. As someone who used to work for Pro Football Focus, but I wasn't on the analytics side. I was fantasy as well.
Right.
They have so much analytics on what they judge players on, and I know they do a heck of a job. They put a lot of time into it and stuff. But yeah, to me, again, just me and you both watch a lot of football, and
exactly.
From my eye test, he's definitely better than the 6th quarterback. I'm sure they probably Aaron Rodgers really high, which is where the difference between fantasy and actual NFL evaluation comes down, because obviously 7 days a week I'd rather have Patrick Mahomes than Aaron Rodgers these days.
Because there's like a couple of quarterbacks I have. Like Patrick Mahomes, I like Deshaun Watson, especially he's battling that bad offensive line and a couple of injuries. I will put him as like my top 5 quarterback.
Yeah. Like you said, we've touched on Deshaun Watson before as well, and you touched on it. Boy, why Houston doesn't address that offensive line? Who they bring in, Tunsil, something like that? That hasn't really helped. He's still taking a beating every week. He said you are damaging one of your best assets. I mean, it's ultimately what drove Andrew Luck out of the league is that for so many years the Colts didn't have an offensive line in front of them, and he's taken 60, 70 sacks a year, or not even, if not sacks, at least that many hits. They're gonna wreck for Deshaun Watson, before they can even get to his full potential.
As a matter of fact, I do have the quarterback, Kyle Allen, as they're going to play Houston. And by the way, Houston gives up the 6th most fantasy points to QBs. So that is not a surprising part, because Kyle Allen did put up some performance last week. Because as you know, this is an early week in fantasy football. where people be like, okay, this quarterback did well in this last week. I might as well get him as my QB. The same thing with Terry Bridgewater. I didn't even expect Terry Bridgewater to play like that. Talk about that later. So how confident are you with Kyle Allen as your starting QB as they're facing against the Texans?
Well, as you mentioned, the Texans are not great. Let me take a quick look at my notes here about how they play against opposing quarterbacks. They're not that great. They've given up over 900 yards, 5 passing touchdowns. Allen looked really good. And I think it honestly helped. And I think we touched on this word that they got Cam out of the lineup because he was obviously hurting.
Yeah.
He wasn't able to put anything on his throws. So yeah, let him rest. This kid's doing well. I think the biggest fear, I don't think that the Houston secondary is anything to lose sleep over. So I think the passing is going to be there. It's going to be J.J. Watt finally woke up last week, got a pair of sacks. So that's a big concern if you're Carolina. Let's keep J.J. Watt and Whitney Merciless off of our quarterback. Our young quarterback, give him time to get the ball. It helps that he's got a Christian McCaffrey there. That can be a safety valve. Or a guy that can pop a 70-yard touchdown run. So I think him coming into kind of seems to have invigorated that team. And let's see if they can keep it going against Houston. But Houston's won some big games. It's going to be a fun game to watch.
Exactly. Now, New England and Buffalo. Now, like I said before, I'm waiting to see this game because more likely I will have both screens while I'm watching. So you have the New England Bills coming to Buffalo. Now, both of these teams are 3-0. I think Buffalo's number 1, and then New England's like number 2, and everybody else is 3 and 4. So you never know who the Patriots are going to lose unless they're going to be going to stadium because they have lost a couple of times at Arrowhead Stadium. But I do like Frank Gore in this one, and I love the way Buffalo's doing on offense. And, of course, you can't forget about the Patriots. So I can see this one as a close one.
Oh, I think so. I think the Bills, they've actually been generating a little bit of a pass rush this year. It's hard to get to Brady. He's got that quick release. It looks like Julian Edelman's going to play after he was banked up last week. That's huge. For the Patriots. Phil Brown saga is over. They no distractions. They can keep playing. Again, I think they need a tight end to step up, but obviously it has not down. Buffalo's offense. I like Josh Allen. He brings that threat of the run. He's ran it for 26 times, 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's only thrown for 3, but that's fine. He's 64% of his passes he's completing. So you got to be aware that he can throw the ball. I think he's got John Brown, probably his best receiving option. But as you mentioned, if they can get Frank Gore, boy, he's an ageless wonder. I can't tell you how many years ago I remember having him on my fantasy team. But I love to see that he's still out there and he's still grinding. They give him his touches. He rarely fumbles. So yeah, this could be an interesting one. And I think every once it seems once a season, except obviously for the year they went undefeated until the Super Bowl, that the Patriots drop one that you don't think they should. Like last year was that crazy game with Miami. I mean, I could see something like that. At that
Exactly.
Buffalo, the Bills Mafia is going to be going crazy. It's going to be so. And they've got a solid secondary. Jordan Poyer back there, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White. I mean, remember he's the guy that Gronk got so mad he slammed into his back, gave him a concussion, got suspended, or he got thrown out of the game. But so Tre'Davious White's a great cornerback. So they're going to stay tight with New England, and they could pull this one out.
And that's why I said don't sleep on this game because this could possibly be an upset.
Oh yeah, I'm in total concurrence with you on that.
Okay, now the fourth 25 game, that is the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears, and that is CBS because I figure like they're more likely going to get that. So this is the second week that CBS has broadcast both NFC teams because we usually see CBS do AFC games late, like 4:25. But this is the second straight week they are doing the NFC game. So I figured that because there's not a lot of like good AFC games you could put on the 4:25. So you have the Minnesota Vikings the Chicago Bears. Now, this game is at Chicago. So the issue I have with the Chicago Bears is their defense because they're giving away 14 points. And then you have Kirk Cousins, which I told you before, I'm sketchy with Kirk Cousins. But what I do give credit to is I like the running game and I like their defense. So I can see this as a low scoring game, but I don't see much to it because like both of these teams can play defense, but if I'm half Chicago, I got to be careful with their defense because like I told you before, they give away like 14 points.
Yeah, that's the thing. You hit it on the head. You got two really good defenses in this game. You know, and as far as fantasy-wise, if you look right now in most standard scoring form, Cousins is the 25th highest scoring quarterback, and Mitch Trubisky is the 26th. Yeah, and Trubisky's the 26th. Well, Trubisky's 26th.
Okay.
So we got the 25th quarterback and the 26th quarterback.
Wow.
The thing with Cousins is though they're just not throwing the ball very much. He's only attempted 63 passes. You know, I mean, and you look at teams like, for example, Matt Ryan's attempted 123, 129. And then you look at it, you know, you mentioned it though. Dalvin Cook is playing so well in the entire Minnesota, running game that they haven't had to pass, which is kind of good because Cousins only completing 58% of his passes right now. And they have not gotten Stephon Diggs involved in that offense. And that should happen at some point. But as you said, these are two great teams, especially pass rush wise. You got Khalil Mack, monster game last week. You've come to expect that from him. You got Danielle Hunter, one of the best young edgers of all. Everson Griffin had a sack last week. I think this could be whichever team protects the quarterback the most is probably going to come out on top. And right now, this is kind of a coin flip to me because I don't think Trubisky's very good.
Right.
Right now, Kirk Cousins isn't playing that well, but they haven't asked him to do. But I think when you look at it, Minnesota has more offensive weapons. Yeah, I would never say Miami has offensive weapons, but Minnesota has Diggs, Thielen, Kyle Rudolph is sneaky good tight end option. So I'm leaning towards Minnesota, but it could go either way because it is in Chicago.
Exactly, because this is a well-known rivalry, especially in the NFC North. But the most one is Green Bay and Chicago. But this Minnesota-Chicago is probably like the second best rivalry in the NFC North.
Oh yeah. It's a hard-hitting game, and like I said, both these teams right now are making hay with their defense. So I think we're going to see plenty of that.
Right. Now, the Sunday Night Football. Now, this one is like probably one of the best Sunday Night Football games you will ever see so far. These NFL. You have the undefeated Dallas Cowboys and then the New Orleans Saints. Now, this game is at the Superdome, but I gotta tell you, like I said a couple of minutes ago, I was very impressed by Terry Bridgewater and the Saints, especially the way Seattle was playing. They didn't play that well because we're used to seeing Seattle being dominated at home, but they didn't. So right now, this is a must-win. It's not only for them to make the playoffs, but for possibly to win that division as well, because they're still up for grabs, and that's a competitive division, NFC South. And then you have Dallas, you got Dak Prescott, you have Amari Cooper, you have Randall Cobb, they got receivers, and then you can't forget about Zeke Elliott. So this one, once again, I can see this one a close one, but it would not be surprising if Dallas does pull this upset. So once again, the Saints really do need this win in order for them to be in the playoff contention and possibly could win that division.
Right. Yeah, it's a big game. I think it works to the benefit that it's at home. But as you mentioned, Dallas is playing really well, especially Dak Prescott. And right now, the Saints are one of the worst teams in containing opposing quarterbacks, especially for fantasy purposes. They've given up 957 yards through the air, 6 touchdowns through the air to quarterbacks, 4 on the ground. Both of those play into Dak's style of game. He's willing to run it in if that's what it takes. So I think the Saints, their secondary has really struggled.
Yes.
They can generate a pass rush. That's one thing they have in their favor. You got Cameron Jordan, Marcus Davenport, so they can do that. But like you said, I was stunned as well to see how well the Saints did at Seattle. You just don't generally see that. You might squeak one out up there. But,
Right.
but they kind of put it on him, and Bridgewater, held his own, and the key to success, even when Drew Brees is in there, and I think this is what they're going to have to rely on this week if they're going to beat the Cowboys, is that they do a great job of protecting the quarterback. They've given up one sack to a defensive lineman through the first 3 games. Now, you got DeMarcus Lawrence, you got Robert Quinn, who just came back for the Cowboys. He had a nice debut. But one thing the Saints do is really pass protect well. And again, they've got their weapons. They've got Kamara. They got Michael Thomas. Austin Hooper has really stepped up as a weapon. Bridgewater, it's his first rodeo. He's been out for a while. But, he was playing at a good level before he suffered that really bad injury. But, I mean, that being said, they're just humming along. I had all cylinders. It's hard for me to picture them losing right now. I think it's going to be a very close game. I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I think it might be one of those comes down to who has the ball last game.
Right. And who can execute on third downs. That's who can execute on third downs and who can commit the less penalties.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't usually talk about this, but I'm going to talk about this because I have both players on both from both teams, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh boy.
Well, the reason why I say it is because I have James Conner, because both teams hasn't won a game yet. But, however, the Steelers, this game is at Pittsburgh, but the Bengals, they give up the second most fantasy points to running backs. And then if you look at Pittsburgh, they give up the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers. So I still edge Pittsburgh because they're at home. And James Conner will get his touchdown, because so far it's a touchdown because he has rushed for like 97 yards. Actually, he did. He has 1 touchdown, 97 yards, 11 receiving, and total of like 70 yards. So James Conner should get a touchdown on Monday night.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is kind of like when I talked about Kerryon Johnson. This should be a week when you go against a defense that allows 6 yards per rush. This should be a week where you have success. And as you said, Cincinnati's not very good against the run. Conner is no Le'Veon Bell. He had a really nice season last. A lot of people are saying, well, they don't really need Le'Veon Bell. No, they could use Le'Veon Bell, but or a player like him. He is on a different tier than Conner, but Conner's a hard worker. He'll grind it out. Yeah, I think he's definitely going to get a touchdown this week, which, we're sounding bold here, but again, it's Cincinnati.
Right.
And boy, this used to be a great matchup. This used to be 4-2. I think they're both 0-3, right? I'm not missing anything here.
No, you're not.
Right. So, it'll be, this is one of those who hit the nail on the head when you brought it up. You're only watching it to see your fantasy guys.
Exactly. Then I have John Ross. So, because hey, at least he's doing well in fantasy because he has 3 touchdowns, 292 receiving yards, and 13 catches.
Oh yeah, he's stepping up. I mean, especially with AJ Green out, and now I see where they've just said that it looks like he's going to be out a bit longer. Then, I think the reason for that is that AJ Green sees this team right now and says, "I'm not." It's just because there's no good things happening right now. But like I said, Ross, yeah, he's having a heck of a year. Yeah, he's one of those guys. If you got him, I'm sure you got him in a position of value in the draft. You didn't overreach for him, so you're getting a great return on your draft pick.
And there's another person I also picked up this morning, Will Disley, the tight end for the Seahawks. He's doing well. That's a sleeper. So far, he has like 3 touchdowns, 124 yards, and 12 catches.
Yeah, he's a sneaky name at tight end. I have in my notes, and then a lot of people. This has to do with Matthew Berry, if you listen to him, but that Darren Waller from Oakland is another guy that it's a lesser known name. He's yet to get a touchdown, but he's got 26 receptions. I think that leads all tight ends. So on the Raiders, I'm sure he's doing that. Right now in fantasy scoring, he's ahead of Travis Kelce. He's ahead of Greg Olsen. George Kittle, so he's right up there, and I bet he might even be available in some leagues.
Fantasy Pros, Walton Spurlin's on the program. Now, where can my listeners find you on social media and your articles?
I am at Walton Spurlin on Twitter. I'm just Walton Spurlin on Facebook. I usually link both my articles to both sites. I have 3 weekly articles, one on Tuesday. It's a waiver wire IDP article at Fantasy Pros. On Wednesday, I have a surprise or disappoint IDP article Usually goes up. Well, it usually goes up Thursday morning. It has to do with IDP again. That's at Fantasy Football Champs. And then I have a Friday Start Sit article for Fantasy Pros regarding IDP. So there's plenty of places to find me out there, Shawn.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Fantasy Pros, Mr. Walton Spurlin. Thank you very much, and I will have you on for next week.
I would, and once again, good luck to everybody in their matchups this weekend.
Exactly.